Praise to the Dark Gods, for it seems that Chaos is ascendant. Let's talk about the Chaos Space Marine army list that took a grand tournament. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos once more, and I thought it would be fun to take a look at a couple of high-ranking tournament placings for the new Chaos Space Marine Codex. Overall, for the past couple of weeks, it seems that the Chaos Codex has been doing okay, but not massively standout. Again, it's another one that Games Workshop seem to have kept in proportion, somewhat balanced against the other armies that are out at the moment, and not just storming to the top of the meta and winning just about everything like Tyranids and Harlequins earlier in the year. In the video, I thought we'd just take a look at two of the higher placing Chaos lists over the past weekend, and see how people are putting theory into practice in some strong armies that are genuinely seeing good success on the tabletop. The two lists that we're looking at today are first the one that's topped the Salt City GT, and then the highest placing Chaos list at the Lone Star Open, a truly massive grand tournament. First up, we'll start with this Emperor's Children list, which was run by Anthony Vanella of Art of War, and he used it to take first at Salt City Grand Tournament. It was a 50-man tournament, so pretty decent size, and I think that that's arguably the best placing for a Chaos Space Marine list so far since the book dropped. The Emperor's Children are certainly looking like one of the strongest Chaos Space Marine legions on paper. Their trait is Flawless Perfection to allow them to ignore hit roll modifiers if they need to, quite handy with how many there are about. Sixes to Wound gets extra AP both at range and in melee, a quite nice boost particularly against Armour of Contempt, and their entire army picks up the Slanesh keyword, can be quite good for non-core units like Possessed gaining that word. On top of that, they've got an enormous ton of decent combat boost stratagems, Troop Noise Marines that can take excruciating frequencies, Heroic Intervention on most units, and pop-up fights last on any character for Soporific Gaze for 2 command points. This army list is organised into a Supreme Command detachment and a Battalion detachment. In the Supreme Command spot, we have none other than Abaddon the Despoiler, who is the Warlord, and is kind of hard to argue with as a choice for just about any Chaos army. He basically does enough to justify his existence purely on the crazy amount of damage that he does. Having some very decent buffing abilities on top of that, with full rerolls to hit and other things, is only insult to injury. He can only take 3 wounds per phase, and deals out a massive amount of melee, and is really hard to deal with when he is screened and advancing alongside some big scary threats. Then to lead the army we've got a trio of other HQ choices, the Dark Apostle with Illusory Supplication and Marcus Slanesh. I think Illusory Supplication is arguably the strongest of the prayers. One unit within 6 inches gets transhuman to hit, so hit rolls of 1 to 3 always fail, plus hit rolls can't be re-rolled against them. My guess is that that will be targeting the Terminators and making them massively painful to remove. As well as that, he can also have the option for Blissful Devotion for 1 Slanesh unit to advance and charge. Combine that with a 6 plus d6 inch charge stratagem, and you've got a very long charge on those Terminators if and when you need it. Next up, we've got a Lord Discordant with a Bale Flamer. Bale Flamers are seriously scary on these things, getting 2d3 plus 2 shots from Let the Galaxy Burn, at strength 6, AP minus 2, and damage 2. He also takes the Technovirus Injector for extra damage against vehicles, and Mark of Slanesh for being Emperor's Children. The Warlord trait of choice for the Lord Discordants seems to be Flames of Spite. They've got a large amount of relatively low strength attacks, and Flames of Spite allows them to reroll all wound rolls in melee, and 6s to wound cause 1 extra mortal wound in addition to normal damage. With a crazy 14 attacks hitting on 2s, you could easily be expecting something like 3 or 4 mortal wounds out of this thing, never mind all the actual damage that it does with its decent quality attacks. As well as that, this one also takes the Mantle of Traitors as well, allowing you to use an Epic Deed for 0 CP. That one could be used on Soporific Gaze, the one for Fights Last. As well as that, it also grants reroll all hits in melee, just in case you needed a few more. So a pretty massive buff for a combat character like the Lord Discordant. Finally, rounding up the HQ section is the Emperor's Children unique character, Lucius the Eternal. He's fairly cheap at 120 points, and has a fairly decent melee stat line, 5 attacks with a damage 2 weapon, but whenever he contacts a unit that's got a weapon skill of 3 plus or more, he actually becomes into a ridiculously efficient beatstick, suddenly jumping up to 8 attacks and damage 3. For some reason, so much of his combat potential seems to be baked into his Duelist's Pride ability. He also has the Lash of Torment as well, which is another way that you can get Fights Last into your life if you need it. Then moving into the squads that are leading into battle, we've got 2 units of 10 cultist mobs, both with firearms, good for actions and backfield objectives with limited points investment. Then there's a unit of 9 Noise Marines, seeing as their troops, 8 of them with sonic blasters and 1 with a Blastmaster. They're fairly solid general purpose firepower, and in Emperor's Children they can also use that excruciating frequencies stratagem. That means that every time they get a wound roll of a 6, the target suffers a mortal wound as well. A big squad potentially with some rerolls is going to have a good chance to get a lot of those. Then we've got a unit of 10 Terminators in the elite slot. A big Terminator block with a Black Rune of Damnation seems to be a very tempting pick in lots of Chaos lists. It does make sense, they're one of the biggest, toughest, and most threatening units around, and giving them -1 to wound all game for a command point is almost a no-brainer. The squad's fairly geared out for melee with 2 Chain Fists and 4 Power Fists. They're particularly good in Emperor's Children as they don't take the -1 to hit penalty. They seem like an excellent target for the Illusory Supplication, plus potentially Abaddon's rerolls if they're getting stuck in combat, and just about any of the very many amount of melee buffs that Emperor's Children can grant them in melee for command points. Then there's 2 units of 5 Possessed, fairly fast moving and slightly scary combat units. Again, they can be the target of a fair few useful stratagems to make them significantly more scary if they need to clear something big, though they're fairly efficient, tough and fast just on their own, maybe not needing as much support as the rest. There's then a unit of 5 Raptors. I'm going to guess that they're going to be a fast moving troubleshooting unit for things like actions, a bit quicker than the Possessed, plus they can deep strike, could still bully some infantry if they needed to. And finally a unit of 5 Havocs with las cannons, fairly sturdy infantry with the toughness 5, armor of contempt and 2 wounds. If you need to gun down an enemy hard target early, I guess you could put Abaddon's rerolls on them before you move everything up. And at least on paper they do seem like they could be an interesting one for that 1 command point murderous perfection stratagem of Slanesh, the one where you spend a command point before shooting, and then you get to change one of the dice to become an automatic 6. Basically being able to guarantee a flat 6 damage out of a las cannon if you do sneak a wound through is very powerful indeed. Overall, it's at least a fairly balanced infantry list, I think. A few big hitting range and melee threats, backed up by some incredibly scary characters, with Abaddon, that Lord Discordant, and Lucius all not being ones to underestimate. In any case, really cool to see the Dark Gods topping the tournament, and of course a massive hats off to the person who managed to make it happen. Otherwise, I thought we'd take a look at another Chaos list as well. This one's by Russell Tassin. I was the highest ranked Chaos Space Marine player at one of the biggest 40k events around, the Lone Star Open run by Frontline Gaming. The list is a Black Legion one, and rather appropriately placed 13th given their crusades. I'd say that the 13th placing though really isn't one to underestimate. This was basically 5 wins, then a loss on the last game. Easily could have been a podium finish if they matched up against something different. This one's a Black Legion list, again very much led by Mr. Abaddon. He's pretty excellent in just about every single Chaos Space Marine list to be honest, but he's even more so in Black Legion, where instead of just reroll to hits for one core unit, he gets them reroll to hit and wound as well. Unless of course he's using it on himself, and just making his own melee damage go through the roof. I think Abaddon's certainly a really big draw to playing Black Legion in the first place. Getting those crazy rerolls is pretty good just in itself, but they do have quite a lot of other interesting tricks these days, getting +1 to hit when they charged or shoot the closest thing. A 1 command point option to suddenly gain another legion's tactics can be particularly nice for advance and charge from Red Corsairs for example. Bringers of Despairs to have sudden fight first and +1 attack on Terminators, which occasionally might make a difference in protracted combats, and a 2 command point one for Legionaries called Herald of Doom. This one basically allows them to turn off enemy OBSEC, kind of guaranteeing you that you take an objective if you have some Legionaries on it. Besides Abaddon, there's 3 other HQ choices in the list, all of which are decked out pretty nicely. First up, there's the Slanesh Demon Prince with wings. Slanesh will allow them to fight first. They take a Hellforged Sword for extra AP and damage 3, and the Infernal Gaze psychic power for some extra mortal wounds, though they will also get the Slanesh Discipline one, allowing a 5+ feel no pain, which I think is usually going to be more value. They then take Flames of Spite, that's the reroll wounds, and 6s cause a mortal wound. Again, a very solid damage boost, and they also have the Intoxicating Elixir as well from Slanesh. That's the one where you have a turn when you can't take any more than 3 wounds in a phase, basically absolutely guaranteeing the Demon Prince's survival. Having that and Abaddon on the go could be super annoying. You've potentially got 2 incredibly dangerous characters that you just can't put down. There's then another Lord Discordant set up very similar. Again, it's got a trusty Baleflamer and Technovirus Injector and the Mark of Slanesh. This one takes the Soul Eater Warlord trait, another source of reroll wounds in melee, and plus you get D3 extra wounds regenerated if you kill any models. And it also picks up the Gorget of Eternal Hatred, +1 to its armor saving throw, which is pretty mad on a 2+ save unit already, a 4+ invul save, and if the enemy does somehow manage to chew through all that, Then every unit within 3 inches takes D3 mortal wounds on a 2+ when it dies, so it's going to go down in quite a lot of style. Finally, for the HQs, we've got a Master of Possession with a Mark of Tzeentch. He takes Mutative Invigoration, which guarantees +1 toughness and maybe +1 strength as well, and the Godly Pact of Flesh that could either be allowed to heal Abaddon himself, or do things like regenerating Terminators from the dead. I guess that he's probably going to be supporting that really big Terminator brick of 10 models. +1 toughness combines amazingly with the Black Rune of Damnation, meaning that your toughness 5 and -1 to wound. Things like bolters would only be wounding you on 6s. Then getting into squads, there's actually quite a lot of similarities between this and the last list. Again, 2 units of cultists, probably for backfield objectives. One of them takes the melee weapons instead of the guns this time. The Black Legion does find some room for some legionaries though, 5 of them with bolters. I'm guessing that they might go for one of the midfield objectives and basically guarantee that you can take it for a turn for 2 CP if it makes sense. There's then another brick of 10 Terminators. This one has 2 Chain Fists and 4 Combi Melters, rather than the extra power fists. Again, it has Mark of Slanesh, so you could cast the 5+ Feel No Pain on it if you wanted. And again, they have the Black Rune of Damnation, near auto include on something for -1 to wound all game long. Then we've got another big damage dealing brick of 10 Chosen. One of them takes a single plasma pistol, but otherwise they're a decent secondary unit that you can also put plenty of buffs on, I suppose. They've not got quite as much raw defense as the Terminators with that rune and the 2+ armor save, but they still hit almost as hard. Then again, there's 2 units of 5 Possessed, fast-moving troubleshooter units that will be able to bully most light threats, and finally a unit of Chaos Bikers, I'm guessing for actions and objectives and things. I guess in theory you could use that 1 command point stratagem on them for an advance and charge if it made sense, or perhaps they're just running around doing secondaries or actions. In any case, another very cool list overall. I really like the stats characters that Chaos can make. The 3 big hitters are both hideously threatening and really hard to remove if you can even target them in the first place. It's good to see multiple different Chaos Legions in play as well, though I think some of the things just seem to be strong enough that you just want to field them regardless of what Legion that you're playing. Things like Terminators with that Black Rune, Possessed, and the Lord Discordant are both pretty similar between the 2 lists, as is Abaddon. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on the list and Chaos in general down in the comments below. Which legions and options are you theory crafting with at the moment? And as always, I look forward to hearing any other insights about these 2 that I might have missed. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly be keeping the regular 40k videos coming. I will try and keep some regular stuff coming for the Chaos Space Marines as well. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well. You can find that down in the video description if you're interested. Making all these 40k videos does take a fair amount of time and effort, and if you are enjoying quite a bit, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early each week, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.